Okay, this morning I'm going to run through a video on creating flats. So from one of my previous videos, we talked about building a light box, which is controllable. So we can see here it uses the protocol from the Olnitak brand. So you can see in the bottom right corner of the video, the OTA is being set sideways and pointing straight up. I've got the light box sitting on top of it, and you can see here on a scale of 0 to 55 the brightness settings that I can control. So if I click and move this along, you can see that kind of just blinked very briefly. It's set to 1, 2, 3. So you can see the auto adjusting of the camera is kind of setting that a little bit difficult to see, and plus the sun isn't helping because it's going clouds and stuff, but it does brighten up. So if I just crank it way up, you can see that it's getting brighter and brighter, and that will go all the way up to 255, which is just super bright. So much so that it's set off the IR sensor cutoff in the dome. I don't use the settings way up here because the settings that we need are sort of at the bottom of the range. So we're talking about, so that's completely off. 1 is 2 or 3. That's kind of where you can see that it actually is lit up just a tiny bit. I might just flick over there so you can see a little bit clearer. So when we've got this up like 8, yeah, you can see that it's pretty substantial. Drops down. We use for most of the settings for the luminance and RGB filters a setting of 3. I know it's a very small number on the overall scale, but we don't want to have the duration of the subs too short. For the HA or all the narrowband filters, we crank it up to about 40 there. So that's what we do for the narrowband filters, just to make sure that when we're doing the flats that we don't have to have minute long subs, because I'd like to take 25 of each from the flats, so you don't want to be having that run for hours on end. So that's how the Flatbox works. What we'll do now is just double check and see what values that I've currently got set in there. This from previous runs. So we've got for the flat box brightness for luminance, I think 1 is actually going to run better for us for luminance because it just lets a lot through. Red, green and blue, we're going to run 3 as the brightness. For the narrowband filters, we're going to crank it up to 40. Maybe this is from previous runs here, 1.3. That's okay. That one's a bit short, so I might set that one a little bit lower so that this goes a tiny bit longer, so maybe 30. And that one we can leave about there as well. All right. Okay, so that's just the baseline settings that we're going to use for the flats. And I'm just going to save that back So sequences profile. Yeah, that's a profile that we've got. So just save that again. Right, so let's load up the calibration wizard. We're going to go with this profile here, which is the configuration I currently have the scope set to. It's going to rebuild an empty sequence here. It's going to leave everything connected, including the flat box, which is good for now. I'll turn the flat box off after, because then it becomes my profile. I don't want to have it hooked up every time I fire up the scope. All right, for the wizard is designed to basically try and calculate for each level of binning, for each filter, to reach a target ADU. For my camera, which is a 1600 mm, I try and set for 30,000. This target here is a little bit challenging to reach, maybe from a tolerance standpoint. I'll just leave it at 500 for now. We'll see how it goes. Basically, the exposure differential can be so short that you have a 500 ADU variation just even on 0.01 of a second. So we'll see what happens if this is going to run. I think I've had mixed results in the past in terms of this is kind of right on the line. So what we're doing is going to say which sets, which combinations are we going to go and try and determine the exposure values for. So I'm only going to do the 1x1 binning because that's, I only shoot 1x1. I could set it to do the others, but given that I never shoot anything other than 1x1 binning, there's no point. In my 8th position on the filter wheel, I have an opaque black filter effectively that allows me to do darks, so we don't need to run flats for that. All right, so let's just watch what happens. We're gonna basically, it'll start at the top, it'll switch filter here to the luminance filter, which is obviously already on. Well, actually I might set it to something else just so you can see that it changes. All right, so it's going to change the filter to be red. It will set the brightness to 1 here in the middle, and then start taking exposures. It'll start at 5 seconds and then try and determine what the ADU value is, and then, well, let's watch it. Basically, it'll then try and reduce, because that'll be too bright. It'll reduce the time of the exposure. Depending on where that ends up hitting, it might still be too high, so it'll lower it again. If it overshoots the target, it'll increase it slightly. And through a process of refinement, we'll come to a value that gets close to 30,000 within 500 ADU. And then it'll jump to the next filter and do it again and again until we are complete. So let's watch. All right, so filter is changing to luminance. Brightness is set to 1. It's doing a 5-second exposure, which is a little bright still, 4.4. Yep, it came up with a good number, which was 3.34 seconds. All right. So the red, it's trying still a little bit too much. 29 is a little bit not quite right. So I think where we're struggling here is that the values that it's jumping between it's 9 attempts here, and it's going too high, too low, too high, too low. So we're just going to get a failure here, which we might as well stop. So this is where the tolerance comes into play. So basically the smallest increment that it could try to go up or down was too much and exceeded 500. So I'm going to make that 750 just to see. And I think we'll just try again, run through the whole lot again. Yeah, we don't have to do the first one again. I think it'll skip over that. So let's start. Oh no, it's redoing it. So what you are seeing as well is this area here. That is the shadow from the pick-off mirror from the off-axis guider. I shot this way last night while I was calibrating the off-axis guider focus. So I'm going to shoot the flats this way because that's what I took my images for 4 hours worth of images last night. So I'm just going to stick with this, even though this is not ideal. I may end up recalibrating or moving the mirror in the OAG, see if I can get focused a slightly different way with the pick-off mirror a little bit more out of the way. Then I'll take another set of flats. So this is not ideal, but I've got to get rid of this vignetting in images the way it is. So I've just got to run these. So right, the red still failed. So I'm just going to stop again. Stop. Right. So I think that's going to have to go to 1000. So let's run the show again. So it is a bit iterative. It's gonna vary for every camera and optical configuration. So you've got some good starting points to work with. You need to go and look up the ADUs for your particular cameras in terms of its full range. So you want to target roughly about halfway through its range. That's what most people suggest. So let's see how close we get on this. Yep, so red passed this time. So increasing the tolerance has got you in the ballpark. Probably, you don't have to be too finicky about this. This is about getting a decent mid range where nothing blows out. So 1000 on a 60,000 full range is not a huge percentage, and I'd feel comfortable with that. So you can see now that after blue is done in a sec, watch the light box should fire up significantly higher. Is that 40? And the light box in the bottom right corner has gone very bright, and now it's going to run this. Now, if I just had a fixed light box, or if I was using sky flats or something like that, where I'm just shooting with a t-shirt over the OTA and just shooting the sky, either you're going to have lack of control when it comes to the durations for the broadband filters, so you're going to have to make the exposures extremely short, or you'd have to go in and adjust the amount of cloth over the scope, for the narrowband filters, remove some or make the exposures way longer. So with this is a really good way of controlling the exposures by adjusting the brightness levels in a repeatable way. All right, we've done all of them, so we're going to save that. All that data is now in the profile. So if we go and check the profiles and see here that those values 3.34, ignore these ones here because I'm not using them anyway. In fact, I'm gonna, as we go and check them, I'm gonna blank out these other ones. 3.34 is good. Yeah, nice durations, not too short. So that 36 number there was, when I first did this, I didn't control the flat box very well, and so I was having flats that go way too long. So even with this one with a reduced flat box brightness, still was under a second, but it's close to a full second, so I'm just going to leave it be. I'm not going to rerun it with a lower value. All right, so those values are there. I'm just going to, because I've just saved all of that, I'm going to save that sequence as profile just to overwrite those values. Okay, that is the process of creating the exposure durations that we need for the flats. So now what we've got to do is actually create the flats. So now we're going to run the flats wizard. I am going to just completely create a new sequence with everything. Alright, it's got no light events because I need to turn these on. Let's try again. Because I didn't have all of these filters set, so let me just go and create one for each. Green, blue. Alright, so that's all of the types. Let's try again. Flats wizard. Go. So I'll just delete this, and you can see that for each filter it has pulled in the exposure times that were calculated in the profile. It's defaulted to 25 each, which is what I set in those profiles through in here. And so I'm just going to rename this one is flats 20, 20, 11, 27, and I'm going to just save that. Right, so let's run the sequence. It's going to take 6 minutes in total. It's going to go through each filter, take the exposures 25 times, download them all, and off I go. So let's watch it go. You'll note here that the filters will change and the lightbox values will change. Right, luminance set, filter box set to 1. Taking the images. Right, first one, second. Right. Let's just watch this go. We've reached the end of the luminance. We're moving to red. This has jumped up to 3. Now we're going to start taking the first image. You can see it's a little different, a little brighter. Alright, so we're just going to fast forward through all of this. When it gets to the HA, it's obviously going to brighten up, get to 40. It says 4 minutes. This I think is overly optimistic. It doesn't factor in download times. It doesn't factor in filter changes. It doesn't do anything. It's not a particularly good estimate of how long things are going to run for, given that the first 1 or 2 has already taken 3 minutes and they're pretty short. So it'll give you a ballpark. But so I'll let this run until the end, and then we'll go and have a look at what our flats look like. So I thought I'd just jump in and have a look at a few things, and unfortunately it's getting too warm. I spent too much time screwing around talking about things on the video. Temperature has now reached nearly 25 degrees. The delta to get to -20 is now exceeded. So the camera is literally running 43 degrees delta at the moment, which is fantastic, but not quite enough to get it to -20. But I shot at -20. Hopefully I can get through all of this without it varying too much. It's already dropping away. I'm going to let it go anyway and do this, but I might have to wait till it cools down outside and redo all of these flats. But the calibration portion initially, in terms of coming up with the right numbers, has been done, which is one of the more fiddly bits because you have to interact with it. Really, this last part where I just have to sit and let it go and make all of the flats is something that I can, once the temperature goes down, under 20 degrees or Celsius or so, I'll just kick off and let it go again. So all right, everything stopped. The sequence is completed. Took 16.5 minutes, so way different than 5-minute estimate, but it's not a big deal. The camera, it's 26 degrees now outside, and the camera's at -17. I mean, all these exposures are very short. So I'm just going to go with these anyway. I don't think it's particularly problematic, given that when we're talking about exposures that are, in this 1 second range, we're not going to be getting a lot of dark current coming through anyway. I also have so normally what I would do as well, I didn't do it this time, is create a set of dark flats, which is effectively, we'll just go through what I would do to do this. I would duplicate this target, rename it, and then I would, it doesn't actually matter which ones these are. The idea is that we're going to get we're just trying to create a set of darks of the right length. So I put a suffix on them just because I like to know which ones are which, but they're all just darks. So what we're going to do is set all these to dark. I'm not actually going to physically have the filter change. I'm going to set them all to my dark filter. All right. So this will set the filter physically to the opaque one. We're taking dark images. I've put a suffix that relates to the filter just mostly for my own information. The durations are the same as what the flats are. I'm going to take 25 each of those. So I will do this later today, but because now the darks kind of are, I really want to be a little bit more accurate than this. I might wait to run these darks later in the day. I might run through the process anyway of doing it, simply because I can finish this process. So we're going to be up for now another 15-16 minutes of taking these images. So let's give this a run. I don't need this. Flatbox doesn't need to be running this time. So let's go and watch the darks get run. It will change the filter to my dark filter, which is the opaque one, and it's just going to take darks. So there's nothing going to be particularly exciting about this, except all notifications going off in the background. Yeah, again, they're very short exposures, so I'm not particularly fast. This is still quite decent in terms of reaching the kind of noise floor levels that are not going to be yeah, the difference between a -17 and a -20 dark on you know, a 1 or 2 second exposure is going to be very minimal. So I might run with these, or I might do some later tonight when it cools off. So this is probably the last stage. I'm not going to sit through all of this. We'll pick this up in terms of when I go and create the master darks and master flats. I'll do it in PixInsight, I think, so that we can go through that process. Okay, so I'm going to record the process here of creating my master flats and master darks from the ones we took this morning. I've already got a master dark for the 5-minute exposures that I've done in the past, but I'm just going to run through what I end up doing for when we do new sets of flats. So we go to script, batch processing, weighted batch pre-processing. Now this is not what is described in PixInsight as the preferred way to do it. It is a good way of sort of making this all happen rather quickly. You probably prefer to go through and do the individual steps. I haven't reached that level of commitment to PixInsight yet. I've only been using it for a little while, but let's just go through the process. So I don't do bias frames because the 1600mm is a CMOS based camera. Goes against the advice in general to do that. So, but I am going to go and add the darks that we took today. So let's just jump through here. I'm going to go and use all these darks. These again were from all of these ones. So this is for each type of filter. There are 25 each. If you remember from the earlier video, the duration was 0.98 seconds. There are 25 of them, and that's for the oxygen. Then 1.31 for hydrogen, and so forth. All right, so we've got all of those. So we're going to select them all, add them in. And if we go and have a look at the darks over here, all right, you can see it. I have got them set and grouped. So the exposure tolerance here is 0, so that basically each one is grouped separately. So don't just sort of group them all in one big bucket. So that's that. Now we're going to go and add the flats. So we're going to go to the flats from today. Going to go add all of those. Now I have all of these images on a NAS drive, so it's where I've got a lot of storage, but it's over the network, so it's a tiny bit slower than having it local. As you can see, each of the filters has been separated out and each of the images has been grouped. So you can see some of the temperatures were not quite up to the -20, but again, we've covered that's not really going to be a big deal. So all right, so this is all we need to go and create the calibration frame. So we're going to go pick the output directory. I'm going to put them here. Just create them here. We'll check the diagnostics here. This is correct. We have no bias and we have no light frames that we're going to run in this. So let's go. Again, this is the warning that we talk about where this is not the optimal way. Does a good job though, and for this part in particular, it's just easier than doing it all in individual tasks. So I'm going to run through it this way anyhow. All right, so just going to let this run for a little while and we'll pick it up once it's finished. Okay, I'm going to apologise for the change in audio. Seems I forgot to turn my microphone back on during this bit. So with PixInsight, I've got 12 threads, 6 CPUs in my laptop. It makes it kind of useful. We get decent performance through PixInsight. We are using a lot of data. So when we look at this, we've got the 7 different filters times the 2 sets of images, which is for the flats and the darks. And then we are taking 25 images each, and they're about 32 megs, 33 megs for each image. So we're processing about 11 gigabytes of data. So you want to do this on a machine that's got a little bit of grunt, or I mean, in the end, it's just about taking time. So we've produced all of our flats and darks now, each of them in the appropriate durations, and these masters now I store away and we can use against our final images that we took the night before. So what we need to do to look at our images, we're going to fire up a second copy of PixInsight. You can do that by going to the menu and picking New Instance. because the WBPP is open, you can't access the images at the same time in the same instance. So let's go and have a look at different images. So this is our master flat for HA. You could see that there's vignetting around the corners as well as that shadow from the pick-off mirror. Okay, now we'll give it an auto stretch. So we can see it's fairly good. Don't see any real problems. Obviously the shadows from that pick-off mirror is there. Live and learn. So we can see all the flats have been created, but also the master flat and the master dark are now being highlighted as being used. So what we're going to do is go and grab all of the lights from the images that we took. So we'll just go and grab all of those. Alright, there we have them. So they're all 300-second duration. Alright, so all of our lights have been loaded. They're all 300 seconds each. So what I'm going to do is add a dark from my recent calibration, which was only masters, it was only a little while ago, so I'm going to use the 300-second dark there and add that in. So we have got a master dark there as well, so that should match. So if we go through and have a look at, so we're going to do registration and integration. Let's have a look at our diagnostics, make sure it's happy. Okay, so we do need to pick a reference image as well. So let's just pick, I know that having looked through the frames last night, they're all pretty much the same. They didn't really move around, so I'm just going to pick the first one. Don't really care. Change the output directory. Okay, let's see what it thinks. We know that. So let's run it, see where we end up. Alright, so we started with 49 light frames. I think, yeah, we only got 40 of them registered. I'm not really going to bother at this point trying to work out what was wrong and tweak it, but I can work on that again later. So let's have we'll pop into the other PixInsight. Let's have a look at our resultant image. Here we go, HA frame. Let's have a look at it. Alright, let's do a stretch. Cool. It's a little nicer than the individuals. So that's it. That's the stretched, calibrated result of about 40 images as a result of all of our calibration work.